Hello and welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here today to continue with video 2 in the series of building the freight station in Grafton, West Virginia. So stay tuned. Alright, so I am Mark Stewart and this is Stu Structures and your favorite Pharaoh equestrianologist. On this channel I don't really show a lot of me playing with my steam locomotives. That's the era that I like to model. Maybe someday we'll get into some of that, the Iron Horse, but in any case, that's the time period that I model. But in this video, we're going to show you how to get a step further into building the freight station in Grafton, West Virginia, or any building that you're wanting to model. The same process is the same, and I'm trying to go through all of the steps that it would take you to build a building of your own, whether you're copying this building, which I doubt, or building just some building that you want to build. It's all the same process. And it's not that complicated. It's just a time-involved thing to figure out how in the world am I going to do this. So in this video, I'm going to show you the process of how I figured out, alright, this is the way I'm going to build this. What materials do I need for that? And show you how I came up with the list of stuff that I'm going to need to do the process of building this building. There's a lot of materials involved. Some of it I'm not sure I have everything quite figured out. I mean, there's another vent in this building, but it has a rounded top, so it's a slightly different building process than the vent box that I put on the last structure. All the ornamental brickwork. I'm not sure I want to hand lay all of those panels, so I may make one panel and make a mold and mold a lot of those inset panels for this structure like I did some of the stuff for the other structure. There's some wood scrolled pieces holding up the roof. We may mold some of those as well and make that an easier process. But the brick, the windows, there's 10 on that second story building, different windows in that building because it was added to the building later on. There's chimneys, there's electrical services, there's just tons of materials. There's an overhead roof over the walkways and planks next to the railroad where they could have unloaded a lot of stuff in the rain or anything and been covered with a roof. So we're going to get into how I'm going to do all that and the materials I'll need for doing all that. So let's just jump into building this and get started. Okay, so here you can see the side of the building. So I'm going to have to figure out the height and the length of the brick on this side as well as this other end panel on here. Now, to do this, I mean, you could blow this up and count bricks and figure out widths of everything if you didn't have blueprints to work from. That's what we did on the beanery when we started that building and looked at widths of doors and stuff to figure out dimensions. But on this one, since we have these blueprints, what I'm going to do is blow this up and look at this. And we can see that the building is 83 feet long. And it's 32 foot 5 inches wide on the end. So that basically gives us a footprint for where this building is going to set down. Then to figure out the heights, we look at this end blueprint of the wall, and we see that there's a 15 foot 3 inch rise up to the end of the first story. But that sets out on the other side of the building another 3 foot 6 inches taller from the track up to that building. So that part is underground on one side, but is a true rise to the building on the other side. So I'm going to add that dimension to give me an overall height of 18 foot 9 inches for the walls for the first story. Now to figure out the peak on this other end, what I did was I took this blueprint and blew it up on my computer screen. And I set an HO scale rule right next to that 15 foot 3 inch mark on there. And I blew it up on my computer screen until that dimension matched the scale rule. So I knew my drawing on the screen was exactly to the size I needed. Then what I did was went into the peak of the roof on the center of that and came down to that same line and measured up, and I got an additional 9 foot. So I know the peak of that roof is 9 feet above the center line, or the middle of that height of that wall. So that gives me the roof line and everything on that end of the wall. So, you know, I went into my box of tricks and all the materials that I have, and, you know, I have these brick sheets that I used on the last building, and I still have several more of these left. So I got out some of these and I measured them, and, you know, one of these sheets is only 71 foot long. So that leaves me 12 foot that I'm going to have to glue, you know, onto the ends of these sheets to make each of the long walls for this building. So what I'm going to do is figure out where the center of one of these panels or something is to glue this addition on. So you know, where I cut these sheets may vary in length just a little bit to get a total of 83 feet. But that way the seam won't show as much in the brick like it did on the beanery when we built the beanery. And then in the end, you know, the sheet will do both ends. Because if you come back and look at this other photo here of the other end of the building, we don't have to worry about the brick peak on the other end of this building, because that second story that was added onto this building has sheet metal that comes down to the top of the first floor on this building. So we only need to add that brick peak on one end of this building. So that basically gives us the dimensions to start out and be able to do, you know, cut out the basic brick walls for the whole building on both ends and both sides to fit that footprint. So the first step I'm going to take then is to come back and cut all that brick. Now this is showing just the basic sheets. The bottom edge here has some you know, a little bit of plastic left over from the mold injection area, so I just want to come back and sand that flat, because this is going to be the lower edge that will actually set on the train table or wherever it's going to set. So I want this to be nice and level and flat, so I get a good edge to set down on the bottom of this. So I just come back and clean all that up. Then I go ahead and mark the heights and you know, cut the two long pieces, and I know I have to cut these 12-foot additional pieces to add on to those long walls. So I come back and go ahead and cut all that. And just remember, when you're cutting plastic, always use your metal edge with the open side away from the piece you're wanting to cut. So when you do that, you'll get a good clean edge. Now coming back and looking at this photograph of this end, the top actually sets out from the bottom wall a couple of brick widths. So what I did was just go ahead and cut both the end walls, but I cut that top 9-foot piece separate from the bottom pieces because it's actually going to set out. So I figured this would just save me, you know, a step of having to build out the plastic later on. And the other brick panel that we really need to do are all these little insets that have all these windows in them. You know, so I came back and drew out, I know they're about 8 foot 6 inches wide, but you know, I want this to glue back behind those other panels. So I want them to be a little wider on either side so that I can glue them to the back of the other plastic. And the height can be the same. So, you know, all this brick I saved from various projects, so I come into my box of miscellaneous stuff here, and I just, you know, I grab a piece that I can cut that piece out of. And, you know, I had this piece left over from the last building that cracked and you know, just kind of ruined the piece by doing the drill bit thing that I explained in my previous video. But in between some of these window cuttings and stuff, I can cut out a piece that's big enough to make this panel out of. So I go ahead and cut the width from in between those different panels, and then come back and cut the height on this. And it gives me a basic panel here to work with. Then I can come in and draw the various window pieces and edges, you know, the coping that goes across the top of the window, where the window ledge is going to be, where all that ornamental dental work in the brick is at the top of that panel. Figure out how it comes down into the panel, and you know, we're ready to start building that panel out. I think I may go ahead, since there's so many of these, rather than building all these individually, is just to go ahead and make one and mold all these panels from that to use instead of making all these panels individually. It should save me a good bit of time in the long run. And then, just take a look at all the other little things. We have this chimney, which is a really tall chimney. It's a whole lot taller than the others we used on the other buildings, so the others that I molded will not work for this. So I was going through my brick, and there's these little square panels that are made for doing filler between panels of DPM buildings, but I think, the brick does wrap the corner on these, so I think I can take these and make that chimney out of these and save me from having to cut plastic and do a lot of scratch building there. And I do have these dental mold brickwork pieces, but I think since I'm going to make one of those panels and then go ahead and mold from that, I think I'm going to pass on these. I did check the width on them, and I think they would work, and I could cut these out and put them in there. They are slightly different from the ones that were on the building, though. And then we need to look at the windows. There's these arched windows all the way around the first story building, and they're multiple pane windows, and I really could not find any on the market that were made with this arch piece in the top. But I think what I figured out that I can do is I can go ahead and use these Tichy windows. So, I'm just going to take these. I'm going to have to doctor the frames a little bit on the top side and cut the angles on each of the panes so that they fit in those archways once the panels are molded. And then just take a trim piece and trim them out around the circular part upstairs. Then we have all these windows in the second story, which are totally different. It's hard to see them in these pictures. This one has been blocked out here. There are actually 2/2 panes with double sash, so the sashes rise. And I do have, these that will work for most of them, but I'm a few short of doing these. So the ones on the right side that are 4/4, I may just cut out part of the the wood in the panels and make 2/2 panes over these to go over one end of the building. And there's a door that comes down those steps from that bridge on the far end, so I'll probably go ahead and doctor this and take the window transom off the top of the door and mount the frame down on it like we did the door on that roof of the hotel building, and make a door out of this to work for that. And then, we do have a few of these old style exterior lights on the building. And, I made a few of these with the brackets out of Tichy lights before. The actual shade on the lights are real similar. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and take these Tichy lights and doctor them the way I did with the others, and just run the wire up through the top of the shade and bend it into place and use it as a support instead of using the brackets here that come with it. And the other thing, although I'm not ready to start on, we need to think about to some degree, is the second story that goes on top of this. It's metal siding on it, but I think I'm going to wait till I get the rest of the building in place before I actually start on the structure up here. But you can see it wasn't put on the building exactly the way that drawing was. It was actually built a little differently, so we're going to build it as it was. And it has gutters on it, it has a small chimney on it, and vent pipes, these windows, and it comes clear out later on, and it was extended just a little bit, so it comes clear out to the edge of the building on the front and back here. In these later pictures you can obviously see that's the way it was. So we just need to start thinking about that. And we've got these stairs that come down from that bridge to this door on the back side of the building. So we need to start thinking about how we're going to do that. I mean, it was all supported with wood, so that's easy enough to do, and it looks like it's all wood planking with some steel grating on top of that. So it's easy enough to hand make, and the handrails as well. So we'll start thinking about that in this process too. So there's segment 2 of building the freight station in Grafton, West Virginia. There's a lot of times I go through all this. If you ever have any questions about things that I'm doing or why I'm doing it, leave comments below. I try to answer all of those as I get them. Sometimes I go through this and I think, I'm hitting everything that I should be hitting, and then later on down the road I think, well, I should have mentioned this or that. So a lot of times people have questions that I think are commonplace, but to them they don't know the answer. So if it comes down to something like that and I have a question that you need answered, put it in the comment below and I will get back to you. One thing we didn't mention before was a placeholder on your layout. I got into this when we did the beanery, but when I started making all of these buildings, I was involved in the club in Grafton, West Virginia, and we were laying out a lot of track work. So I made one of these an exact size of all the buildings for the, it even includes the overhead walkways and all that kind of thing, the platforms. So when you're building your layout and you're laying a lot of track and stuff, you don't want to lay it in such a manner and then build these buildings and not know that they're going to fit on your layout. So it's always good to have a placeholder that gives you good clearances and everything, so when you're running trains you're not going to have a problem down the road with a building that's too big or awkward or isn't going to fit in a triangular space, or any of those types of things. So a lot of people just take a real thin, like cereal box cardboard or something, and even make complete mock-ups of their buildings and put them in place. I don't normally go that far. I mean, I can see the reasoning for it, because even though I've got this, you have roof lines that are up here that come out too, which are a different aspect of clearances. So I can see the reasoning for doing that. I've just never felt the need to do that. Not that it's right or wrong, everybody does things their own way, so whatever works for you. I say that over and over again. But anyway, we got a good start on the freight station. Some of the basic wall parts are cut out. In the next video we'll start laying out where all the cutouts go for all those recessed areas. I didn't mention the big doors that are 8 foot by 10 foot. I think I'm going to scratch build all those out of wood. I have basswood and balsa wood. I'm not sure which I will use. I like basswood better, but some of this has to be extremely thin. So we'll look at that as we get more into it. There's still a lot of questions to answer about putting this building together. I just tried to hit on the basics and give you a good get off the ground type of footwork with this video. And I think we did that. We have all the basic walls for the first story cut out. We're ready to start working on those. The relief panel with the window in it, I've got the basic layout on a panel for that. I think I need to cut it a little more narrow. By the time I put two of those side by side behind the front brickwork frame, they're going to be a little too wide, so I'm going to have to narrow that down just a little bit. But there's the ornamental scrolling that goes over the windows and doors. Most of it's just standing brick seams that go across them, but above that is a little tiny 3 or 4 inch circular area that has indented bricks sitting on ends above that. So I think I figured out how to do that, so we'll have to get into that at some point. In tools, I didn't cover a lot of basic tools on this one this time. Just haven't been into using anything different or odd that I haven't used in the past. I do try to give a different tool every segment, and this segment just hasn't happened because I didn't use anything weird this time. But in any case, we're starting through the knife blades again. Like explained in the beanery, we used 39 knife blades while building the beanery. I've been through one now and putting a fresh one in, just cutting the plastic and some of the stuff I've worked on to this point. And then we'll get into the glues and all that as we start putting all this together. So in the next video we'll get on to the next step of putting this together. Like and share these videos. There are a lot of people out there that would like to know how to do some of these things, and getting off the ground with a brand new building is a good place to start. So share this with people in the hobby, and maybe they can pick something up, or maybe in the comments they can teach me something. I am still learning. I've been in this for a long time, but I learn something new all the freaking time. It's just amazing. So anyway, subscribe to my channel. There's a little red button on YouTube underneath of this that says subscribe on it. Just press that and you'll be subscribed to my channel. If you hit the little bell that's there beside that, then every time I have a new video come out, you'll be notified when that video comes out. You can tune in and watch it and keep up with the series as we go along. And you know, no matter whether you do any of that or not, I just encourage you to jump out there and get some materials and scratch build some buildings. Start learning. It's not a hard process. It's more time consuming than anything else, and it's very rewarding to build a building, and you'll have something on your layout that nobody else has, and you did it yourself. So anyway, happy model railroading, and we'll see you next time.